Hello everybody, welcome to another hot August night. Excuse the straps showing here. It will be embarrassing if I keep annoying if I keep adjusting them, so it's just gonna hard to be how it is. Okay, next year Pluto goes into Aquarius. It's been in Capricorn since 2008. Now I've looked back and I'm going to do another vlog covering this at the 10 most significant periods in history recorded. During all those periods, Pluto had just changed signs. So it's no small thing when Pluto changes a sign. What will it mean as Pluto goes into Aquarius? Well, I've already suggested in another vlog that as it enters Aquarius at exact the same time as the eclipse in 29 degrees of Aries next year, when Mercury is retrograde in Taurus, it could be kicked off with a cyber polygon. I also mentioned that as Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008, we had the big financial crash. But I want to briefly look at what happened when Pluto went into Virgo. What did that mean? Libra, Scorpio, which is an interesting one, and Sagittarius. Now, I'm just going to look at a note here. So because Virgo obviously is the sign dealing with health, manufacturing, technology, and things like that, Pluto in Virgo did mark a period of revolutionary changes to employment law, medicine, industrial production, the ease of production. Also, computers revolutionized science, business, calculation methods, speeding everything up, making all sorts of new financial interests possible as well. Labor unions also became powerful forces while Pluto was in Virgo, which was between 1957 and 1972. So this was the rise of the union, and Virgo as a sign rules labor force, the union, etc. There was also a great deal of automation in the industry in general, particularly the motor industry. Pre-packaging of food was developed, meaning it was much easier to keep food for longer, transport food, get a greater variety of food all over the world. And there were also startling discoveries in medical science, and the introduction of psychedelic drugs as well became popular among the younger generation. So that was from this book, Cisco and Echo, and I just thought I'd read from that. But they don't say anything. That was published before it went into Virgo and that into Libra, so they don't say anything about it. So Pluto goes into Libra in 1972. Now, Libra is all about relationships and marriage. That's one of the things. But what happened just prior to that? It was the Nixon shock of 1971 when the American under Nixon, they stopped backing the US dollar by gold. And I think this was very significant in terms of how the whole economy moved from there on. So while that cannot be particularly related to the sign of Libra in terms of symbolism, I think it's an important event that was happening when Pluto changed from Virgo into Libra, and illustrates what I'm saying. There's always some very important event that affects the whole worldwide society and economy that happens as Pluto changes sign. One of the other things I feel was quite prevalent as Pluto went into Libra is divorce rates going up, all around the world, sort of homosexuality being legalized in many places, and alternative lifestyles, people cohabiting. It kind of broke away from the family unit, which, as you all know, if you follow my vlogs, Tavistock Institute, everything like that, was one of the plans. Like the long march through the institutions was a destruction of family. So more divorces definitely plays into that, because they like, the whole single mother thing, and I feel that was a theme. But please, if you have some more input on what you think could have been going on when Pluto was in Libra, let me know. One of my suggestions was a growth in consumerism, increased use of credit cards, people more interested in, buy now, pay later, having designer labels, having the latest thing. That was all becoming more of a thing, because that would match into something to do with Libra. But very interesting. In 1984, Pluto enters Scorpio. So at the time, and I showed you that book, wherever it's gone. I showed you this book, right? And read from there what they said about Pluto in Libra, because they were anticipating that when Pluto went into Scorpio, with Scorpio being the sign of nuclear energy and Pluto being destructive, they were thinking that we would get incredibly close to nuclear war while Pluto was in Scorpio, and we could see absolute destruction. But we didn't see that, actually, did we? Because Pluto is at home in Scorpio, ruling that sign, so maybe that mitigated a little bit. But what happened in 1984 that is to do with Pluto being the ruler of sex and Scorpio also being the sexual sign? AIDS. Now, You guys will know from my BitChute video where I covered what John Rappaport says that I'm not necessarily saying I buy into their version of the whole AIDS story, but it was a worldwide thing. It was a big scare story. It changed people's habits. It scared and demonized certain communities. It was very important in global culture. And, you know, living in Africa at the time, we were very scared of it. We were told, oh gosh, so many people are going to be dying. It's rife. I mean, it was a very, very big thing. So that's the first thing I'd say about Scorpio. It was also the era of Thatcherism and Reaganism. And what did they do? They totally transformed the economies along Keynesian lines, and there became a big emphasis on supply side economics. So that was privatization, deregulation of the city called the Big Bang that Margaret Thatcher did, and this created an enormous boom. Now, at the time, I mean, years ago, I would have looked back at Thatcher and Reagan and said, brilliant, gosh, deregulation, privatization, this is all good stuff, this was a good era. Now I look back differently, and I think this was just the introduction of neoliberal economics, which has brought us where we are today, and that privatization hasn't led to this nirvana where everyone becomes a stakeholder and a shareholder. All the power's just been sucked up to the top, and it was a way of redistributing wealth up and creating astronomical utility prices that we're seeing in the UK now. So now I think about that quite differently. I remember Jackie Mason laughing about Reaganomics and saying Reagan's economics is the more and more and more and more you spend, and the more the gap gets wider and wider between spending and income, the more it balances out perfectly. And I think, yeah, it was kind of an explosion in spending as well. So it's all that kind of Scorpio things getting out of control. So Thatcherism, Reaganism, privatization. There was also a glut of oil. Now Pluto's all about mining. There was a glut of oil due to new mining technology that was invented, which led to it being much easier to extract oil in the Middle East or wherever. And as I say, that led to a glut of oil. And also, very important, talking about mining, it was the end of the coal and the very big industries in the UK. And if any of you guys are a Billy Joel fan, you'll know the song Allentown, which is about exactly the same thing happening in Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania rather, as was happening in the north of England. So I do a little parallel to now, because remember, in the north of England, the coal miners, the shipbuilders, the people in those sort of industries were sacrificed for Thatcherism, which was moving the UK to a service-based economy rather than a manufacturing or a mining economy. They were going to import all of that. That was cheaper. And she wanted to crush the unions, which had become strong under Pluto in Virgo. So I look back at that now and I think, yes, those communities were sacrificed then for the sake of the agenda, which was the neoliberal agenda and turning Western economies into service economies and shipping all the things out under the guise of free trade, shipping all industry to cheaper places so they could make more money by doing it cheaply in China and doing it more dirty in China or in the Far East or wherever, because there were less regulations, less rules, more corruption. So it was far easier to avoid all the regulations or environmental laws in the West by shipping all the industry out, yeah. But communities were sacrificed, particularly in Newcastle and the north, which never recovered. And right now, a much wider sector of society is going to be sacrificed to fulfill this green agenda. That's going to be you, me, our neighbours, people who can't afford to pay these astronomically high energy prices to fulfill this green agenda. We're going to be sacrificed, just as those people were sacrificed in the 80s. Okay, so I think Pluto, which was in Scorpio until the year 2000, when it moved into Sagittarius, was also a very big time for the globalist agenda. Yes, we saw the fall of the Berlin Wall, the so-called fall of communism, but it wasn't really, because it had metastasized, hasn't it, into the march through the institutions all around the world, cultural Marxism, and the infiltration of communists in everything. So that had already happened. But on the surface, we saw that we had this big conference, we had the meeting between Gorbachev and Reagan in Reykjavik, and then this whole de-escalation of the nuclear thing, and then the fall of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of apartheid. Everything was looking so wonderful, but globalism was emerging. And what did you have in 1993? The birth of the EU. What did you have in 92? The Rio Climate Summit, where Agenda 31 or Agenda 2030 was formulated and put forward by Marie Strong and that Norwegian woman, I don't remember her name. So you can see that the cogs of the wheel for this neoliberal globalist agenda were actually solidifying under Pluto in Scorpio. So we expected grand changes when those two came together, and we were getting them because everything we had known was subtly being changed. It was all becoming more centralized, which is what is Pluto in Scorpio? It's controlling. All the levers of control were being put into place in those Pluto in Scorpio years. Like I say, all the green gender cranking up and the Al Gore things and all that was getting ready. The Clinton years, selling the trade secrets to China in the Chinagate scandal, everything like that was going on. Now, I think I talked about all that. Yes, the end of coal, blah, blah, blah. Now let's talk about when Pluto goes into Sagittarius. Couple of important things happening around the year 2000. The internet takes off, right? Really gets cracking, the World Wide Web then. More people are looking at it, more people are seeing information, more people are publishing. Sagittarius is the sign of publishing. It's also the sign of truth. So we have the explosion of the truth movement. More and more ordinary Joes in their kitchen, on their computers, publishing fantastic information, and the hegemony or the grip that the mainstream gatekeepers have on information starts to fade as there's an explosion of information. So, rah for Pluto and Sagittarius for bringing that one on. That's something we can all cheer about. Also, very early on in Pluto and Sagittarius, we get the 9/11 attacks, and suddenly everyone's talking about Islam, the threat of Islam, radical Islam, extreme Islam, Islamic terrorism. And for the whole of the time, Pluto is in Sagittarius. That is like the biggest thing. And we see another Gulf War, the Afghan War, all these attacks on people in the Muslim countries under the guise of spreading democracy or putting better rulers in. All that comes about. I must say, I never thought of Islam before 9/11, never thought about it. It wasn't something on my radar, something I needed to know about. And then all of a sudden it was everywhere. So that was another thing. Sagittarius is all about international travel. Now, I remember when we first came to the UK, there was a show, you guys will remember, it was called Cilla Black's Surprise, Surprise, or Surprise, Surprise, as she would say. And they used to reunite families who lived in Australia with their British relatives. Now, back then, once family immigrated to Australia, they may have never seen their family back into the UK. So children had gone out, they'd had their own children. Those grandchildren had never seen their grandparents. And on Cilla's show, she used to kind of raise money and then you reunite them and show that on the show. But suddenly that's a thing of the past. Pluto into Sagittarius. Suddenly there are all these low-cost airlines, there's all this wonderful competition, flights are dirt cheap, people are flying suddenly for a hen night, for a weekend, business travel explodes, so an absolute explosion in travel happens with Pluto and Sagittarius. Free trade as well, massive increase in free trade, which is not free, and I say we've been sold a duckling or something, no, sold a tortoise, I couldn't remember the phrase. Free trade is not, it costs jobs at home. I don't want to get into that as well, but free trade increases, religious wars, obviously the internet, and changes in laws that affect a religion like gay marriage, because Sagittarius is also the sign of religion. So you've got changes within the church happening at increasing rates, changes in laws, and, gay marriage is just one of those examples. I also think this could have been when all religions were really taken over. Catholicism, Protestantism, and Islam were all taken over by the Freemasons or whoever you want to call these people. Pluto enters Capricorn. Obviously, this was very important because we had the financial crash, which we've never recovered from. They've just been kicking the can down the road. There was also a earthquake, Brexit and Trump. That was kind of an earthquake where people were beginning to question the establishment, no longer trust the establishment. It was now clear that everything we'd come from, the police, the legal system, the financial system, all these things had been corrupted, and they were beginning to panic a little bit as too many people were awakening. Now, Capricorn is the power structure, it's the patriarchy, it's the authoritarianism, and that was all getting a bit shaky, partially because of what had happened with Pluto in Sagittarius and the explosion of information. This was now beginning to affect the way people were voting, acting, spending. whatever, and this was a bit of a problem for the elites. Okay, so after all that, I'm excited to speculate on what we can expect with Pluto going into Aquarius. Well, first of all, because Aquarius is a sign of IT and technology and information technology, obviously, and the infrastructure and the satellites and all that, one of the things I'm worried about is the cyber polygon, and that all gets kind of taken down as a way of taking down the web, because it's a problem to them, isn't it? Like the UNESCO and the whatever has got this little video out about tackling conspiracies and all this nonsense. So they're very worried that people are talking, because Aquarius also signifies groups, organizations, and activism. So people are going to start forming different political movements which are quite revolutionary. This is also a problem for them. So Aquarius is also the sign of what some people deem the right wing. So Pluto going into it could mean a surge in right wing. We're seeing that in Germany, and we're definitely seeing it with all the MAGA candidates who are now possibly going to be elected to Congress. So I don't know if right wing is still the right term, because right wing was traditionally conservative, supporting the police, supporting authority, and that left wing was the one who supported free speech and were more radical. So no, those that doesn't work anymore. It's not really right wing. It's just that it's a lot of the Christian conservatives are driving this new push for free speech, anti-establishment, etc. You guys know the spiel. Aquarius is about populism, so I think this will further see a growth in populism. But on the other hand, Aquarius is also technocracy. So populism is rising, the awakened is rising, but the people who are pushing the technocracy, the Noel Hararis, the World Economic Forum, the super rich and all that, they also upping their game as we up our game. Because there's two sides. There's the kind of hippie, free love, let's all live happily together Aquarius side, which a lot of us are on. It's, well, like I say, it's not really right wing, but yes, okay, if they want to call it that. Versus the other side of Aquarius, which is this extremely authoritarian, technocratic, communist side of Aquarius. So it's the battle here between the two sides of Aquarius. So activism increasing, definitely, and people getting more ingenious, because Aquarius is the sign of the genius. Necessity is the mother of invention. The more obstacles we have to face in getting our information out, the cleverer we are going to get about it. So I see a startup of a whole new internet. Maybe a startup of an internet by someone on our side. So never mind just like having the getters and the, I don't know, the DuckDuckGos or whatever. We might have an entire new internet or computer system that works very differently in a way that some of the privacy coins or the crypto coins are working. Think of something like cryptocurrency, but you're sending messages. And I think that there's something going on with some of the coins where you can send each other currency, but you can send each other like a minute amount of currency with a message attached. And that would be totally private. So you can imagine you're sending each other crypto, but it's not really about the money you're sending. It's the message attached to the money, and that could create a whole new email, internet thing that they can't access, right? See what I'm getting at there? I tell you what, that came off right off the top of my head. I invented that one. Well, not totally invented, but remembered that one. Aquarius is also airplanes and airports, and we know that they want a total shutdown of air travel. We've seen the Cambridge documents on net zero that we would only have in the UK, Heathrow, Belfast and Edinburgh. So that's a huge cut down in air travel, and you can tell with the prices, people won't be able to afford it anymore. More airlines will go out of business, and as you know, a lot of the pilots are having kind of problems with their health at the moment, which goodness knows why. Now, here's a strange one. I looked up in my book of definitions, and something it says for Aquarius is blood in the water. Now, isn't that like a scene from the apocalypse? And didn't I recently say about a river turning red in China, and why was that? Yes, I was saying about this river turning red in China. So it's just images that are coming, and symbolism we're talking about here. It's interesting, isn't it? Also rules the Caspian Sea, very interesting, because Aquarius rules the Caspian Sea, because in that region of the Black Sea, we know that's a lot of conflict going on. Aquarius rules electricity. And Pluto is moving into the house of electricity, house of destruction. Well, what are we seeing before our eyes? The destruction of the means of Europe to create a consistent power supply. We've got this movement to green energy, the decommissioning of the coal power plants or the nuclear power plants, the nuclear power plants getting really old, the electricity supply in grave danger across Europe, America, Canada, simply by following these green policies. Very interesting too. Something that shows up for Aquarius is heart weakness and heart irregularities. I'll just leave that one with you. Another thing that repeatedly shows up for what Aquarius rules is the Holy Land, Syria, Iraq, Iran, all those countries. So are we to see, because I've been saying that something's going to break out in that whole region of the so-called Holy Land, right? Some sort of conflagration. And we know in the Protestant prophecies, they talk about Iran uniting with a whole lot of North African countries, even though there's a difference between Sunni and Shia, I know that, as some sort of force that's going to end up possibly aligning with Russia in some sort of great conflagration. Okay, another thing which Aquarius rules, and I'll just read it to you and leave it, is acute and uncommon nervous disorders or spasms. And of course, Aquarius rules revolution. So, guys, that's kind of interesting. I think we can actually already see a lot of where the kind of action from Pluto Aquarius is going to be coming. We're feeling a lot of it already in terms of the electricity and the power supply. Pluto is also about power, international power supply that's going to go into total meltdown, maybe seeing blackouts, not being able to rely on electricity as we always did. So I hope you enjoyed that journey through Pluto. I should just mention Pluto in Leo during World War II. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed that journey. By the way, it's also quite interesting that Pluto was in Cancer for absolute ages. I think it was in Cancer from World War II right up till before Pluto was in Cancer from World War I right up to before World War II. But it only stayed a very short time in Sagittarius, only 8 years. So it's very irregular, Pluto. Awful long time it spent in Cancer, and it was fast through Sagittarius. I just thought I'd mention that as well. Okay, guys, I love doing that, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure you will. It's something quite different.